Hi, and welcome back to Watch Me with Emily Galindo. I am your host, Emily Galindo, where I am here to move, touch, and inspire entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs all over the world. We do that through having vulnerable conversations, transparent, direct ones that talk about overcoming obstacles and exploring all things entrepreneurial. It is not an easy life out here being an entrepreneur and running a business and handling life. And so we are here to do it together to continue to encourage one another to not give up and continue to strive for your dreams. So we typically on this show, we are interviewing other entrepreneurs. We are having those discussions, those direct, vulnerable conversations. And so I thought that maybe today would be a little bit different, as none of you really know me. A lot of you don't know me at all. And so we thought that it would be a great idea for me to start with being an example of being vulnerable and direct, and letting you guys have a glimpse of who I am, why I'm here, and what I'm trying to accomplish. So thank you for joining me. Again, my name's Emily Galindo. I am an entrepreneur here in the Houston, Texas market, and have been working in the national market for a long time with entrepreneurs everywhere, helping them understand how to build relationships, how to overcome obstacles in business, and inspiring them to be better leaders in our community. I did not start my journey this way. I did not even consider that this would be a possibility in my life, considering all of the things that I've been through and done and chosen to go through, quite frankly. But I'm here and I'm excited to be here. I am just now learning to come into the acceptance stage of what my life's purpose is on this planet, and that the skill that I have is the ability to move, touch, and inspire people. And it's a scary and heavy responsibility that I am extremely passionate about, and I'm excited to share with more and more people. My journey didn't start this way, as I mentioned. I came to Texas about 10 years ago I guess 14 years ago. And before that, life was very, very different. There's an entire community out in the world that does not know this version of me. And I'm lucky enough to have another community of people who've watched me start from there and grow into this. And I am extremely grateful for those individuals. So I want to start by just kind of shedding some light on the entire growth trajectory and journey of what I've been up to, because I think it's really crucial to understand that no matter where you are in your current life, in your current situation, no matter what you are currently sitting in, it does not have to stay that way. And it does not mean that you are there's no judgment on you, and that this is not a sentence. This is not a life sentence that you are currently sitting in. No matter what choices you've made, no matter what you've done to others, no matter what you believe or have been taught to believe about yourself, it is not permanent, and it can always change, but you have to want it. And for most of my entrepreneurs, we know that, and growth is hard. And whether that's growing your business, right? There's lots and lots of growth obstacles, or if you're growing yourself as a person, there's lots and lots of obstacles in that as well. But most of us who have overcome those obstacles, they get to the other side and say, it was worth it. It was always worth it. And so that's where I want to start, is why it was worth it. Right? I have an amazing community, as I mentioned, an amazing business, an amazing business partner, and an amazing children that I wouldn't have if I hadn't gone through all the things that I've been through. So I was, a lot of where I come from, I was raised a military brat in the Air Force and moved around a lot. I think a lot of my sales skills that I've acquired, for those of you who don't know, that's my background, sales and marketing. I'm a sales and marketing expert. And my salesmanship came by way of watching my dad sell one of the hardest things ever, which is the military. He was a recruiter, and we spent quite a bit of time in restaurants, laying on benches, spending hours there watching him talk, poor servers into joining the military to pay for their education or to have a different life. And that's one tough sell, and I got to watch that my entire life. It also made me very adaptable because we moved around I had to meet new friends every 2 years at new schools and do all of that. At the time, as a child, it probably wasn't it was just life. I didn't know of any other way. But quite frankly, as an adult, that skill has served me very, very well in sales and in networking. And so I'm thankful for that experience. But it definitely gave life a different twist. When you hear friends talking about, I'm always mystified when people are like, I grew up here. My business partner, Rick, he was just talking about going to high school here in town. And that was quite a long time ago. And so I'm always mystified by that. Big, giant holiday feast. The holidays are coming up. Holiday feast with like 20, 30 family members. That was not what I grew up with. And that's not to say anything bad about it. It's just very different, but it made me very adaptable. And I appreciate those experiences. I later went on and moved, we moved to Utah where my dad did his final station. And it was a difficult situation because I was not like the other kids in Utah. And so I typically ended up having to make a choice between the in crowd, which I was not a part of, or like the bad kids. And so I ended up hanging out with the bad kids for the rest of of my childhood and early adult life. My mom ended up wanting to go to law school. So my parents went back to college when I was in junior high. And that was a really pivotal, interesting experience in my life because I got exposed to all like critical thinking skills and big theories and big discussions in life. And that is another, again, non-traditional experience that I would not trade for anything in the world because of the people that I was able to meet, the conversations I was able to have at a very early age. We're talking 13, 14, 15. And I think that dramatically shaped who I was in terms of free thinking, critical thinking, seeing the world from a different perspective that I am just now learning later on in life is not what I see the world from a very different lens than the rest of most of the population does for some reason. I think that these two major experiences have shaped my ability to kind of look at things from all perspectives and be able to distill down what's really going on. And so when it comes to me helping coach entrepreneurs and business owners, that is the skill that I bring to the table. That is the thing that I can see. I hear lots of information and I have the ability to quickly distill it down and going and understanding what's really happening here and being able to tackle it without having to sift through fluff, if you will. So after my mom and dad went to college, my mom decided she wanted to go to law school, and we moved again. And, that we moved to Spokane so she could go to Gonzaga Law School. And that was definitely, she graduated from law school the same year I graduated from high school. And that is kind of where the bad part, I would call it the bad part of my life story started. And I was still hanging out with bad kids, making bad choices, and getting into extreme amounts of trouble, legal trouble, addiction trouble, and making the worst possible choices. I burned every single bridge I had. I alienated every single person I knew. I did whatever I had to do to continue to stay in the shame spiral that I was in. And that lasted until I was 25 years old. And I had finally gotten to a place where I had nowhere else to go, honestly. My friends, my family, my everybody wanted nothing to do with me anymore. And that was a really tough pill to swallow. And so I thankfully had a friend that I went to high school with who lived in Texas who wasn't around, didn't really know kind of the depth of the destruction that I had been involved in, and offered me an opportunity to start over. And so that's what I did. I dropped out of school the last quarter of my senior year in college. I was getting my marketing degree from Eastern Washington University. I had one semester left. or quarters. I don't remember what we did back then, but nonetheless, I took my final student loan paycheck that was supposed to pay for my tuition, and I took that paycheck or that check from the school and packed a duffel bag worth of clothes, and I moved to Texas with nothing. That was it. And we called that the last house on the block in recovery. And she did. She took me in. I moved into her home and got to start a whole new life. Didn't ever finish school, but that was, the title of the podcast is Watch Me. And that's probably the most definitive watch me moment of my life is usually we get to those watch me moments when somebody says you can't do something. The only person who was saying that to me at any time at that time in my life was myself. I was the one who was always saying that, was you can't do it. You'll never overcome this. But there was a very faint voice that said, this was it. This was my only option. It was this or jail or death. Like that was my only option. So I took the leap and I said, watch me. I am going to do this. And so I moved and I started over. Did what I normally do. I was a bartender for a couple of years. You can always walk into any bar and get a job. So I knew I had job security when I got here. And I did. I got clean and I stopped living that lifestyle, and I started working. And at that time, my parents were, not around. They didn't want to see me or speak to me. And so for 2 years, I grinded it out here in Houston. I had no car. So if anybody lives in Houston, you know that it's 115 degrees in August. I moved here in September, and I think my parents came finally down like 6 months later and helped me. I got my first apartment, and probably one of the proudest moments of my life was being able to put my key in my door and walk into my own apartment. And they helped me decorate. We went to IKEA and stuffed this little rental car full of all this IKEA stuff, and my mom helped me decorate it to make it a home. And then they bought me a bike. And I was able to bike to and from work. And so again, in Houston in 115 degree heat, this is what we mean when we say whatever it takes. If you really want it, you will do whatever it takes. And that includes riding a bike 5 miles to and from work in 115 degree heat, because that's what it takes to pay your bills, to reach the next rung on whatever ladder you're climbing, to do whatever it takes if you really want it. And I really wanted it. I wanted to be an adult. I wanted to grow up. I wanted to stay clean. I wanted my family relationships back. So that's what I did. And I did that for 2.5 years until actually my parents decided that Spokane didn't really have a lot of economic opportunity anymore. And my dad was in sales, and so he found a job here in Houston that helped relocate them. And so they did. They relocated. My parents moved down here. My sister followed a few months later, and I got my family back, and they moved here. And my dad got this job selling advertising and marketing for digital solutions. The company was called web.com. And that's what he was doing back in Spokane. And so it made sense, and it was a great company. And so he had been there for a few months, and then he got me an opportunity to also get a job there. And so I started my very first professional job career thing in October of 2014. And that was a whole thing in and of itself when we talk about overcoming obstacles, right? So let's rewind a little bit. So I've been working at the bar and the restaurants, and that does not mean that my life is all cleaned up, right? I've got no driver's license because I lost it in Washington. I didn't finish school, all of those types of things. And so when I get this job, this dream job, right? It's outside sales, probably making $100,000 a year. And it's going to get me out of the bar industry. And I had already planned, this is kind of a funny story, I'd already planned a trip to Jamaica with my friends from the bar before I even knew this opportunity was going to happen. And so I'm in Jamaica. I had already given my 2 weeks at the restaurant. was starting this new job. I'm in Jamaica with my friends, and I get an email from the HR department. Now, mind you, this is my first professional corporate job ever. No idea what to expect. I get an email from HR asking for a current driver's license and all of the other information they're going to need, right? My insurance and all of those types of things. And I didn't have one. So I was going to lose this opportunity. So from Jamaica, I'm sitting in the lobby. I remember it very vividly. Beautiful blue water, open air, breeze coming from the beach. And I'm in the lobby because that's where the Wi-Fi is the strongest. And I have no idea what to do because they said, you can't start until you have an ID card, right? But we need a valid driver's license. And in Washington, if you pay $250, you can get a temporary driver's license, and they give you like 2 weeks to fix your tickets. And if you don't, then they will resuspend your license. But at least for 2 weeks, it's valid. And so from that lobby in Jamaica, I booked a flight. When I got home from Jamaica to Houston, I bought a flight, I packed a bag, and I went it was October, so I went from bathing suits and shorts to winter wear in Spokane. The next day, after I had gotten home from Jamaica, packed a bag, flew to Spokane, went straight to the DMV, paid $250, got my valid driver's license, and flew home. Didn't even see anybody, didn't even talk to anybody, but I did whatever it takes. I was not going to lose this opportunity, and it cost me $1,000 to get home and get my ID so that I could start this job. It wasn't until 4 years later, after I had worked maybe 3 years later, after I worked my professional career, made #1 sales consultant, #2 sales consultant in the country, found networking and BNI, and I was killing it in life, like as far as I was concerned, buying designer handbags, and I still didn't have a valid driver's license because I had to pay off all these tickets. I had to pay off all this debt. And so I worked 3 years to be able to do that. I know I should have been doing that instead of buying designer bags. I'm clear on that as I'm telling you this story. But at the time, priorities, right? And so I did. I eventually got all of that stuff squared away. And again, another watch me moment. Like, you're not going to take this from me. I want it, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get there. And so that's what I did. And then I found BNI, and BNI, for those of you who don't know, is a networking organization based off of like helping business owners and business professionals get more business through passing referrals and having relationships in the community. And I was extremely good at that. I'm going to be super honest. If like that system, it was exactly what I needed in terms of being that connector, right? Like that was a life that I lived before, but now I was doing it for good. Like I got a guy. That was a line I would use back in my bad days, but you can use it now going, I got a guy. I can totally connect you. Like that's the same skill set, but turned in a more productive manner. That's what I mean by whatever situation you're currently in. Find the skill that you're great at, and then find a great way to monetize it and turn it into something that's going to fuel your success and fuel your freedom. So that's what I did. I found networking and passing referrals was similar to passing other things to people, but with a better return, right? And so I found BNI. I did that for 6 years and sold web.com. Digital marketing solutions, and was extremely happy. And then web.com got bought out by a private equity firm, and they let everybody go. Like everybody in outside sales on one call was laid off, including my dad, including my boss's boss, like everybody. And I had no idea what I was going to do. So, right, I think life is like that, these peaks and then valleys, and this was definitely at the peak, right? Making the most money I've ever made, doing living the high life, right? I wasn't married. I did get married eventually in that process, but I had finally, I'd gotten married. I had a son. Life was really good, and I had just had my daughter, and I was on maternity leave. I had just come back from maternity leave like the week they laid us off. And, right, I had no idea what the heck I was going to do. Obviously, I mean, I had a month. They gave us a decent severance, but I was going to go into sales or something to that effect. Well, simultaneously at the time, BNI, Business Network International, the referral group I was a part of, and I was kind of volunteering for, let's be honest, they were going through a buyout as well. And BNI Global, the corporation, was buying franchise-owned regions. So for those of you who don't know, BNI is typically a franchise organization, meaning certain people own certain regions, and then they build these business referral groups within that region, right? So in Houston at the time, there's like 45 groups. These are individual groups of business owners who are there to pass each other business and help each other grow. So BNI had gone through a buyout and they had purchased the Houston region from our franchise owner. And so they were looking to have somebody's feet on the street, somebody local to run the organization. And so I was out of a job and I loved BNI. And so I threw my hat in the ring. And at this time, right, I'm early 30s, very little management experience. I was an independent contributor, no management or leadership skills or experience whatsoever. I had talked about that with my boss at the time, and I just I was in that space where I didn't want anybody else to be able to impact my income, right? If I got a team, that means I'm dependent on whether or not they perform to make my paycheck, and that wasn't cool with me. Like I was going to be in control of that. So I had no leadership skills whatsoever. I was simply a worker. And so I applied for the job just because I really loved BNI and I thought I could do the job. And I don't know why, but they gave it to me. And it was another, my first, I would even say big girl job, right? Corporate, we're talking board meetings, we're talking, next level responsibilities for me as having never experienced that. And, like I had said, I had just had my daughter, and so I was working from home, managing this region, almost 1,000 members. And I'm going to be honest, I freaking killed it. I loved it. I was so good at it. We became the #1 region in the country for the 2 years that I got to do it. And I loved moving and building the team and inspiring people. And I just jumped headfirst into leadership. And I had an amazing mentor, Gina Harold, who, if you have not ever, please look her up. She's one of the best, most incredible leadership advisors ever. And I got to work with her directly to help me understand what it takes and how to speak to people and how to move them in a way that's going to encourage them to make action that's going to benefit themselves, right? Like, I got no dog in this fight. I mean, I just want you to be the best version of yourself. And it's my job to kind of figure out what makes you tick and how to get you to move in that direction. So I got to be able to do that. And it was, like I said, it was incredible. And I got the bug, and then COVID happened, 2020. And corporations do what corporations do. And, they let everybody go too. And I was traumatized. I think that this is probably a place where most business people, entrepreneurs can identify with, which is, if you can't do the thing that you love or that you're great at, then who are you, right? Moms go through this when they're empty nesters, but it becomes your entire identity. I was Emily, the BNI girl. And even in my home, it was a running joke. Like, I would say the core values of BNI are, and it would just get so exhausting. So when it all happened, I was devastated. It was my dream job. I loved everything I did. I loved working with the people, and I didn't know how those skills were going to translate into the regular world, because I find that in the networking space, nobody really knows, unless you're in networking, professional networking, you don't really understand it, right? There's the market penetration for this industry is like 4% of the business business populations. What I mean by that is only 4% of all businesses have ever heard of professional networking or been a part of this organization. And so that leaves a huge chunk of people. I remember all the time people would go, "What do you do for a living?" General conversation. And I would just laugh and go, okay, well, now I have to explain what freaking BNI is, what networking is, before I can even tell you that I'm a regional director. Like, I would have to go through that entire process because nobody knew. So how do you explain that on a resume? Because at the time it was COVID. I don't know if you know this, but networking requires, coffee, handshaking, being in a room with a lot of people. And so, it wasn't a good time for us. We did transition into online stuff, Zooming and whatnot, but that's not why people do networking. They like other people. They want to be around other people. And so I took a year off. And worked in a medical office because that, I never thought in a million years that my resume would ever not be able to be used. Like, you can always slang drinks or sell something. And as it turns out, during a global pandemic, nobody wants you in outside sales and nobody wants you serving drinks. So I was kind of without a home and ended up at a medical office, which was honestly another amazing experience. It was exactly what I needed and when I needed it, with the person I needed it with. He was just incredible in coaching me through that part of my life that I felt lost. I felt like I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know who I was. I didn't think I had any value in the world anymore. I knew I was good at stuff. I can answer phones and put in data, but I had lost everything about who I thought I was. And he was phenomenal in helping me get through that. And then one day I got a phone call from a BNI franchise owner that wasn't with the global community and owned her own region, and had said that she admired all of the work I had done in Houston and she wanted me to come do that for her and her region. So I did. So I worked remotely for the franchise owner of Alabama and did that for 3 years, helping her run her region and doing exactly what I did with Houston. And by the way, we did become the #1 region in the country while I was there. And it was an amazing experience and I loved every bit of it until one day, when I got my job, I forgot, I'm going to back up. When I did get my job at BNI, my global job, I had another event just like the Jamaica experience. And I forgot to mention that. And I think it's important because the Jamaica event and the driver's license, when I got the job offer thinking, I can't believe they actually hired me, they were doing my background check and they had seen that I had gone to school at Eastern Washington University. But as you recall, I had quit, right? I took my last check and I walked out the door and moved to Texas to better my life. And so in my background check, because I had put that I went to Eastern, they couldn't verify that because because I owed them money. They wanted the tuition money that I took from them. And so we're talking, what is this? This is like 8 years later since I'd left Eastern and moved on from that life, right? I was done with it. We were all clean hands. And BNI called me and said, we can't verify that you went to school at Eastern and we can't move on in the process until you do. So I have to get on the phone with Eastern and figure out what they want. And they want $3,500. They want the money back to be able to get this job. So here I am again, after the driver's license thing, and now we're 6 years later and we're again needing something. And so I had to come out of pocket to figure out $3,500 to pay to release my transcripts so I could get my new dream job. So again, when you got those things that are sitting in front of you saying, what do I do now? You figure it the F out. Like, that's just what you have to do if that's what you really want. And so I want to get really clear that if you aren't willing to do that, then you really don't want that, period. So I'm not a big fan of excuses. I'm a big fan of solutions. So if you can't find one, let's work together. But if it's every time I come up with a solution or we collaborate and come up with a solution and you still have excuses, then we need to reframe what it is that you are actually after, because that's what it takes. It's whatever it takes to accomplish the mission. And so, yeah, I did overcome that. And then, and got the job, moved on, went to the franchise and coached them for 3 years until Rick came to me and said, so when I say coach, what I mean by I want to kind of explain what the dynamic of BNI looks like, because I know I'm talking to a lot of people that probably have no idea what I'm talking about. And so BNI, remember, is like, if you think of the chamber, and there's lots of business people there. They sell real estate, insurance, mortgage, roofing, plumbing, whatever. And in structured organizations like that, like BNI, they have a weekly meeting. They come to the meeting every single week to kind of get to know each other. So that way, when you say, hey, you don't have to know anybody who does AEC, you can say, oh yeah, no, I got a guy. I know him and he's a good friend of mine. And you give them the business, and that's how we can help you grow your business. So that's what we call it. That's what they call a chapter, the chapter level. Then there's 45 of those in Houston. And then there's somebody who helps manage or run those to stay in line with mostly branding, because the magic happens at the chapter level. Mostly stay in line with branding guidelines, and then helping the members like reach more levels of success. And then there's like a person who does that for lots of chapters. And then there's the person who runs all of the chapters and all of that team. So that was me at that level, is managing a team of people who are helping to volunteer to manage all of those 1,000 members. I think it's important to understand, because the volunteers, that middle management, are really what's the key to the success of any paying member of that organization. It is not coming from the corporate level. It is not coming from the regional director level. I mean, leadership, it all rolls uphill, but as Gina would say, leadership. It comes from the people who are there working with the chapter leadership and and the members' experience is only as good as the leadership of that chapter. And so I'm always talking to them about how to increase revenue, how to, convert more sales, how to leverage referral relationships and generate more business that way. And so that's what I was doing in the field, until Rick came to me and said, hey, you have generated over 3,500 members for this organization, and I would like for you to do that for yourself and for us. And so he came to me with an opportunity to buy my own franchise, to buy a Network in Action franchise. And Network in Action is a networking and coaching franchise. Some would say in competition with BNI. I don't see it that way. I think of it as where BNI members go when they're ready to graduate. I just remember being a member and going, okay, what's next? Where's the next level? Like, I'm sitting here in the same meeting, learning the same things over and over and over, and I'm ready for more. I'm ready for more. And that's what Network in Action is. It's the next level of what is more. We're providing more education, only working with higher level individuals. I know lots of people who have come to visit BNI and have looked at it and gone, my people aren't here, that my target market's not here. And that's what Rick and I are building, is like, we've been in business for 10 plus years. We have lots of great connections. We know the actual experts in the room. And so we are putting all of those experts into one room, into multiple rooms, into all of the groups that we're building and working with. And that was I'm going to be honest, that's scary. Like, that's another moment when you're like, do I leave behind the thing that I've known for forever, or do I finally do this for myself? And for my entrepreneurs in the room, I know we've all had that gut freak out, scared shitless kind of moment where you're going to hang everything on this opportunity. And you take that leap. You take that leap and you go for it. And that's what I did. Now, granted, I was hoping that there would be a softer way to do it, in terms of like doing that for them over there in Alabama and also doing it for myself here in Houston. And, the organization didn't feel like that was a good use of they didn't approve of that, and so they abruptly let me go, and which is really unfortunate for them, because I was, quite frankly, working for them harder than I was working for myself, because that was what was paying my bills. And it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me, quite frankly. It was very abrupt, very unplanned. It spun my life into a complete and total tsunami of events. And but it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me, because I finally have the ability to focus 100% on my passion, what I'm here for, who I can impact, and focus on the business that Rick believes that Rick and I believe so passionately about. And, even through all of this, the day I lost my job at BNI this last time, the next day my husband left me, my family fell apart. I had to move back in with my mom and dad, and that's where I currently am. That's my current situation, is a horrible divorce, my family breaking apart, and I'm still here trying to help move, touch, and inspire entrepreneurs, because that is what I'm on this planet to do. And I'm doing it by way of coaching, by way of building connections in the community, by helping get more exposure for our members. And I do that because it is hard being an entrepreneur and a business owner and being a human in this society without a tribe, without a community, without people helping to support you and love you. It is so much harder than it has to be. It's so much harder than it has to be. Quit making it harder on yourself and be a part of a community of people who want to help you. And that is what Network in Action is. That is what Rick and I are building. That is what we are here to do. People walk into those rooms because they want to grow their own business, and that's fine. But do it in a way that when you're around people, what you get is so much more than just business. You get to have real relationships with people who have been through what you've been through, who have resources to help you. And it doesn't have to be hard. Quit making it harder on yourself. Get involved in the community, in the business community. Get involved with people who want to genuinely help and support you. And that is my story. That is what we're here. This is why we're here. This is what I want to help do. So even if it's just you listening to the podcast every week, that's you getting involved, and it's a baby step in that right direction. But don't do it by yourself. It's not worth it. I mean, it might be, but then you're just going to be angry and resentful that you did it all by yourself. It does not have to be that hard. It's still hard, but it's a lot easier when you have people surrounding you. And I'm learning that right now. And I hope that you will learn that too by maybe coming to visit us or checking us out at niahouston.com. And we would love to chat and help support you in any way we can. But I just wanted to take a minute today to kind of explain who I was, why I'm here, and how any of that is important to you is just because you're not alone, knowing that entrepreneur life is difficult, but it doesn't have to be. All right. Well, thank you for sticking around and listening to my story. Next week, we'll have a guest and we'll listen to their story and learn from another wonderful person and what their watch me moment was. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.